37. Mr. Cook taught last time, and we've kind of skipped a few chapters, so we've jumped to chapter 27 here. So we'll go ahead and start with a prayer. Stop. Our Father in heaven, we're grateful this morning to be gathered together here in your presence. Thank you for the opportunity you bless us with this building, that we can congregate and glorify you and edify each other. I pray this morning for all the kids downstairs that your word soaks into their hearts and it leads them all their lives, and that as parents and grandparents we remember our roles to set examples to them and to teach them about you at every possible opportunity. I pray as adults in this class that your word enlightens us and strengthens us to face the temptations of the devil and to square off against him and to prevail, because we know that you are on our side always. I pray for forgiveness of sins in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we're going to go ahead and read chapter 37, and then we'll get started here. Jacob lived in the land of his father's sojournings in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was pasturing the flock with his brothers. He was a boy with the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, his father's wives. Now Joseph brought a bad report to their father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any other of his sons, because he was the son of his old age, and he made a robe of many colors for him. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him even more. He said to them, "Hear this dream that I have dreamed. Behold, we are binding sheaves in the field. And behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed going to reign over us? Are you indeed going to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream and told it to his brothers and said, "Behold, I have another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and the 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves on the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, and his father kept the saying in mind. Now his brothers went to pasture their father's flock near Shechem. And Israel said to Joseph, Are not your brothers pasturing the flock at Shechem? Come, I will send you to them. And he said to him, "Here I am." So he said, "Go now, see it is well with your brothers and with the flock, and bring me word." So he sent him from the valley of Hebron, and he came to Shechem, and a man found him wandering in the fields. And the man asked him, "What are you seeking?" "I'm seeking my brothers," he said. "Tell me, please, where are they pasturing the flock?" And the man said, "They have gone away, for I have heard them say, 'Let's go to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them at Dothan. They saw him from afar, and before they came near to them, they conspired against him to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes the dreamer. Come now, let us kill him and throw him into the pits. Then we will say that a fierce animal has devoured him, and we will see what has become of his dreams." But when Reuben heard this, he rescued him out of their hands, saying, "Let us not take his life." And Reuben said to them, "Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit here in the wilderness, but do not lay a hand on him, so that he might rescue him out of their hands and restore him to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of the robe and the robe of many clothes that he wore. And they took it and they threw it into the pit, took him and threw him into the pit. The pit was empty and there was no water in it. Then they sat down to eat. And looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead with their camels bearing gum, balm, and myrrh, on their way to carry it down to Egypt. Then Judah said to his brothers, "What profit is it if we kill our brothers and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh." And his brothers listened to him. The Midianite traders passed by, and then drew Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. They took him to Egypt. When Reuben returned to the pit and saw that Joseph was not in the pit, he tore his clothes and returned to his brothers and said, "The boy is gone, and where shall I go?" Then they took Joseph's robe and slaughtered a goat and dipped the robe in the blood. And they sent the robe of many colors and brought it to their father and said, "This we have found. Please identify whether it is your son's robe or not." And he identified it and said, "This is my son's robe. A fierce animal has devoured him. Joseph is without doubt torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his garments and put sackcloth on his loins and mourned for many days. All his sons and his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted and said, "No, I shall go down to Sheol to my son, mourning." Thus his father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of guard. All right, has anybody here ever read Anna Karenina? Me neither. But apparently, it starts out with the opening line: "All happy families are alike. Every unhappy family is unhappy in its own way." So we've been studying through Genesis, and we started with, sorry, I'm really hot, Abraham, and we talked about the dysfunction in his family, and it just continued on and continued on until we reached this point. And obviously, this family has got problems of jealousy and hatred and communication. I mean, you name it. This family is an example for all of us how not to interact. They're a mess, and but the cause of their unhappiness, jealousy, resentment, and hatred is unique to them. And your family's is unique to yours, and my family's unique to mine, and everybody has their own dysfunction, for lack of a better word, within their families. So they're no different, but this is all recorded, and we talked about last time about how it's amazing that the stories of the people in the Bible, they don't shy away from hiding the flaws, and they're on full display in this chapter for sure, of what jealousy and envy and all of these things can build inside you to the point where you're willing to throw your brother in a pit. Who here has brothers and sisters that they would have loved to punch in the face when they were about 15 years old? I never did, but I would like to. And when you get older, you get out of that some. But when you're a teenager and you have brothers and sisters, it's hard sometimes, especially when you put it into a situation with a father that that obviously favors one child over the other. I try to think about this from Joseph's perspective, like he took this coat gladly. He was obviously glad that his father had favored him and given him this coat, but he had to know that he was rubbing it in his brother's faces. I mean, it's almost like when you read through this, you get a little bit of he's kind of a cocky 17-year-old. Look, I got this robe. Look, I'm having these dreams about what's going to happen in the future. I mean, you kind of understand why his brothers were developing these feelings. I mean, it wasn't right. We all can understand that it's not right to favor one child over the other, because what does it immediately do to the child that's not being favored? I mean, like that starts developing, and from little kids up, they can see what's going on. Todd. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I know. No. No, I know. It's like he's a. No, we don't. But nobody likes to be tattletailed on, whether you've done something good or wrong. Nobody appreciates that. But what's interesting about that is the father doesn't seem disturbed by it. Seemingly that this was new news to him. That the older brother's behavior was kind of off the rails a little bit. Yes, sir. Ashton is always rubbing Jennifer that Andrew's the favorite. Um, but you got to keep in mind also, Jacob, or well, to your point, real quick, the names of these children bear out what you're saying. The fact that there was this strife and envy between Leah and Rachel, and favoritism even between them. And you kind of read Leah's account and you feel sorry for her. I mean, she's not loved by her husband. So from the get-go, from the marriage relationships, the children relationships, they're all messed up. Joseph here, though, he's 17. He's lost his mother about 2 years ago. So I've not lost my mother. Some people in here have, and I'm not looking forward to the day. I know that it's going to be horrible. 2 years after the fact, though, a 17-year-old boy, I guarantee you, he's still hurting from losing his mother. So I don't know if this is, maybe possibly the father Jacob has developed more of a relationship with him after the fact here. I don't know. What is funny, though, is that Jacob calls Joseph gives him his coat and without saying it, says he's his favorite, but he calls him the child of his old age, which is kind of ironic because is there another child coming? Yeah, he's not even the last one. Benjamin's the last one, and his name actually means child of his old age. So even the favoritism that could have been given to Benjamin as the youngest and the other daughter or son of Rachel was bypassed and given to Joseph. And I don't know all the reasons for that. Joseph wasn't in the line of Jesus, or he is in the line of Jesus, but he's not in the direct family. So it's like it's not singling Joseph out for some specific thing here other than his completely spiritual example opposite of his brothers here. In chapter 35, we back up a little bit. Rachel has died. Isaac has also died at 180 years old. Benjamin is born. Rachel dies having Benjamin. So when we get to chapter 37, somebody explain to me how Isaac's still alive. He died in chapter 35. Kind of jumps back. It follows through the whole history. Then it gives the whole history of Esau in chapter 36. And that's the whole story. Then it backs up a little bit to fill in some gaps here in chapter 37. Let's see. So they're in this land that they don't possess yet. They're living in Hebron. He sends them, Joseph from Hebron to try to find his brothers. But they're foreigners in this promised land. Now, I want to think about for a minute, what was the promise to Jacob? What was different about the promise to Abraham and the promise to Jacob? Anybody have any ideas? I think, I could be wrong, but there's one difference, and it was the 400 years enslavement, I believe. I don't think that was stated to Jacob directly, but I believe it was stated to Abraham directly. So you got Jacob. Is he living in the land of promise? He is. So in his mind, maybe he's thinking, okay, well, this promise is fulfilled. But if he thinks back to the promise of Abraham, what does he know? That they're still going to be foreigners in this land that he's in right now, but they're also going to be enslaved for 400 years sometime in the future. Now, keep that in mind when here in a little bit when we talk about when Joseph relays the dream to his father and his brothers. The father rebukes him initially, but what does he? It says that he continues to think about it. Like he doesn't just write it off as nonsense. This could be pulling two things together that aren't there, but it kind of seems to me that he knew this promise to Abraham. He knew that it hadn't been fulfilled yet. Joseph is making these dreams, visions about what the future holds, even though they may not be interpreting that. But the brothers automatically write it off as total nonsense. This is stupidity. We're never going to bow down to you. The father does the same thing at first, but then it also says he stopped and thought about it some more. So I think that Jacob knew that the promise hadn't been entirely fulfilled yet. He may be living in the land, but there was still a lot more to those promises from God that hadn't been fulfilled yet. And that's in Genesis chapter 15, 13. It says, "And I said to Abraham, know certainly that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, and you will serve them, and they will afflict them for 400 years. So they're living in this land as foreigners, but it's the land that God had promised. But they're living among the Hittites, which are descendants of Heth, the sons of Canaan, the great-grandson of Noah. Were they, did they fear and worship God, or who did they worship? Idol worshippers, right straight up. I mean, it gives the descendants right down from Noah, and the Hittites were idol worshippers. So Jacob and his family they are influenced by this. And how do we know that? Yeah. Rachel stole the idol because she obviously wanted it. But before that, Jacob had took idols and hid them out of their houses and then went and tried to worship God. So the idol worship was infiltrated into this family as well. So put that into the equation with Joseph as well. He's getting this information from Jacob that's truthful about God, but also like in the last time I taught, there's still this, I don't want to say doubt in Jacob's mind, but he's trying to make these conditions. If you'll do this, I'll serve you. You'll be my God if you do this. I don't know how that translates into how he taught Joseph about God, but I would say it's probably fair to say that Joseph had some misunderstandings about God in his youth just because of all the different influences all around him. Then you take him and you put him in Egypt and you've got a whole other set of influences. But there was one, he must have got enough from his family somewhere to obviously build the spiritual foundation that his brothers did not build. I know I'm just going on and on. Anybody got any thoughts, comments? Yeah. No, not at all. All right, so his father gives Joseph this coat. Joseph goes to check on him. Joseph relays all these dreams to him. The coat ends up being a constant, just jab to his brothers. Every time they see him with this coat on, what do you think? Look at this hooligan. I mean, he thinks he's something special. And I think probably Joseph probably thought he was something special. Just kind of the way this reads, he kind of acts like he's got it going on. But eventually it reaches the breaking point, and they see him from afar off. And it doesn't say how far off, but they concoct a pretty quick plan how to get rid of him. And not only get rid of him, but what's the other part of this plan that they concoct? They're going to kill him, but that's the murderous part of it. Then they're going to lie to their father about it. And I didn't notice this until I just read it here a minute ago, but where it talks about at the end of chapter 37, when Jacob is grieving, and it says in 35, all his sons and his daughters rose up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted him. There's only one daughter, so that means that all the sons were present at this point when Joseph is thrown into this pit, except Benjamin. So you've got all 10 other brothers. They're all there. And what's it say here? That after this lie has been told to their father, they're going to try to comfort him, knowing the fact that they're behind all of this misery and hurt for him. Yes, sir.
It kind of leads you to wonder if their comfort was actually more of a jockeying for position as the new favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. Who would have been given the birthright initially? Reuben. Who's the one that tries to come to his defense? Reuben, which is kind of ironic. Reuben's the one that tries to save him from this situation, but who does the birthright end up going to? Judah. It doesn't even, huh? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just thinking that Judah, it's interesting because fast forward, I don't want to get ahead of where you're all going. At the very end of the story, when they're in Egypt with Joseph, there's some discussion between Judah and then, of course, Reuben and the guilt that they have in the midst of all of that with Joseph. So there's a lot of kind of examination of what we're reading here and trying to understand. I've always wondered, it's strange, is Judah trying to ally himself with Reuben in offering up another solution, let's sell him, that way he stays alive? Or is he truly so prideful, hey, let's make some money off of this?
Yeah, no, that's two ways to read that.
And, trying to understand his heart. I think by the time you get down to the end of the story, you understand that Judah was trying not to kill. I think you kind of saw what Reuben was trying to do. Reuben still failed. I think that's what an application for us today. Do we stand by and allow things to happen and go with a group and just not say anything? Maybe we think something else, or we don't strongly do something. Reuben could have ended this, and he doesn't.
All of them could have ended
right
somehow.
And there's this idea that we sometimes stand and we say, well, we don't support that, but I'm going to step back and not do anything. Well, in essence, you're more dangerous than the person that's either supporting or not supporting, because you're the voice that doesn't get heard. You're the voice of reason, that you could be the one that actually helps in the situation. And we've been talking about this all weekend because I've got children who I have to go to and say, look, are you helping or are you hurting? Well, I just don't want to be part of the problem, so I'm going to step aside and just watch it happen. I'm like, well, you're just as guilty as the people causing the problem.
Yeah.
So, we've got to stand up for the things that are right. And we've got to be able to do those things, and that includes us today. So it's the same message that they're getting and that we're seeing here.
Absolutely. Gene.
In verse 35, my version says, all the sons and daughters go to the country.
Yeah.
You would expect them to act like that if they just killed him.
I know it.
They wouldn't even want to be dancing in the streets or anything, because that would be suspicious.
Yeah, they played the role pretty good. All right, so they throw him into this pit, probably with some sort of cistern. It says that it wasn't full of water enough time. You can actually look on YouTube. They think that they may know where these pits are. So I don't know if it's accurate or not, but it's interesting to look at. I want to look at chapter 37, verse 36, and I want to read something here. So you might have noticed when Ishmael or the Midianite traders come on, some places it calls them Midianites. 2 words later, it calls them Ishmaelites. What's going on there? Why are they called Midianites and Ishmaelites, traders? Anyway, yeah, go ahead.
So part of it is the way in which they're living. If you think about what happened at Hagar and Israel, there's a distinction being made between Sarah's offspring and those of other people, so Hagar and Keturah. And these people, if you know where the land is, so if you were to split the Sinai Peninsula down, I guess it's for everybody here, it would be on this side. But the Midianites, where they lived, is actually where Hagar and Ishmael were there. And these are offspring of Abraham, but they're not part of that promise of that. And so they are all traders. That this is what they do. They travel these roads. They go into Egypt. They come up. There are specific trade routes through this area, but their land butts up right next to that area too. And so, who are we trading with? It doesn't really matter. These are people of the desert. These are people that are moving through this. So they're sometimes referred to as Ishmaelites. Later on, we're going to call them Arabs.
That's right. Look to that point real quick though. The words are interchangeable, and there's biblical proof to show that they're interchangeable. When you look at the story of, let's see if I can find Gideon. it says, the men of Israel said to Gideon, rule over us, both you and your son, and your grandson also, for you have delivered us from the hand of Midian. Then Gideon said to them, I would like to make a request of you, that each of you would give me the earrings from his plunder. For they, those whom Gideon and his men had just conquered at El, had gold earrings because they were Ishmaelites. Now the weight of the gold earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, beside the crescent ornaments, pendants, and purple robes which were on the kings of Midian. After Gideon had delivered the Israel from the hand of Midian, he requested the gold earrings that the Israelites had plundered. Who did they plunder them from? They had just conquered the Midianites, but they're also called the Ishmaelites in this same story. And Moses uses the names interchangeably as well. So if anybody ever comes at you and says, "Hey, what's going on here? This is can't be right," it is right, and it is because these traveling salesmen, for lack of a better term, they all lived on the same sort of land. So they were distinct people. They were interchangeably the traders, the Ishmaelites, the Midianites, Jew.
Are we sure this is not two different groups of people?
That's not my understanding.
Verse 35 talks about the Ishmaelites. And then verse 38, my version says, then there passed by, it talks about the Ishmaelites in 35. And in 28 it says, or 25, it says, then there passed by the Midianites. After this first group, are we sure it's not two different groups?
I don't think so. Go ahead.
Let's say then there passed by.
I know. It confused me a little bit personally too. Go ahead, sir.
Well, I was going to say, the 28, the Midianite traders passed by, and they drew Joseph out of the well, lifted him out of the pit, and sold him to the Ishmaelites for 12 shekels. It doesn't say, and then sold him to another group by. And I think they are two groups, by the way. I think that there are two groups, but I think that they are lumped together. If you look at so I'm a history professor. I teach this in geography. That's what my specialty is. There is a land of Ishmaelites and there is a land of the Midianites, and they literally are next to one another. They're on that side. That's what I was making the statement was that these are clans out in the desert, and then we lump them together and we call them the same thing because they live the life the same way. They're not part of the promise. They are a larger group, and again, that's why I said we call them today Arabs. Or if you're in that area, you would just say they were Bedouins. So they lump them together. So I think that they are two separate peoples, but they would not make a distinction because they're not part of that promise group.
Okay, now I think I'm more confused now than it. So do you? Go ahead, Ernst.
Or it may offer an even simpler solution. They could be Midianites, Ishmaelites traveling together.
Yeah, there you go. Let's just go with that.
It doesn't have to be complicated.
And it doesn't have to really, in all matter. But what really matters is that his brother's intent was to dispose of him somehow. But they chose not to kill him, which,
Verse 28 says, then there came by.
Yeah, I mean, I want to study it some more because my understanding, like when I read it, I was like you. I was like, is there two distinct caravans coming through here? One group passes up on him, the second group takes him. Mitch.
Well, I read it, it's a caravan of Ishmaelites. So it's a large group, all identified as Ishmaelites. Then it specifically says some Midianite traders. So I get the idea that these Midianite traders are part of this large Ishmaelite caravan.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense too.
To Mitch's point too, the caravan of Ishmaelites was made up primarily of Midianites. In the end, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But
I prefaced that by trying to say, hey, look, we're cool Christians. We'll have the answer for this. If somebody tries to tell us, and I don't even have the answer for it. So anyway, Moses ends up on his way to Egypt by his brother's hand. I want to take a quick look at the character of some of these brothers. We get Reuben as the firstborn. In 2 chapters from now, in Genesis 47, Jacob acknowledges him as the firstborn, reminds him that he's been a failure in many ways and he's unstable, comparing him to turbulent waters. And this is the kind of character some of these men were. Reuben defiled his father's bed by having sexual relations with Bilhah, Jacob's concubine, and the birthright is removed from him. And that's recorded in 1 Chronicles 5:1. It says, Now the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Israel, for he was the firstborn, but for as much as he defiled his father's bed, his birthright was given unto the sons of Joseph, the sons of Israel, and the genealogy is not to be reckoned after the birthright. Next, you got Simeon and Levi, number 2 and number 3. They end up being murderers, stealers, liars. They avenged the death of their sister, I believe, right? I got that right.
She was taken.
Yeah.
She was taken and seduced, and they ended up defending, or actually
More than defending.
Yeah.
Right, that's what my point was, is that there was a defense there, but they went beyond the defense and they were just brutal. Gene.
From the way I read this, it looks like Reuben was not part of the original crime. He heard about it. It says in verse 21 he heard about it, and he tried to deliver it. So I don't believe he was part of the original group that did this crime.
But they were all there. I mean, he was there, and then he said he was going to come back.
He said he heard about it.
Well, however, but he was present enough to know that he was going to come back to save him out of the pit.
He heard about the crime, but I don't
Yeah.
think he's part of the original group that did it.
Maybe not, but regardless, when he tried to come back, he wasn't there, and then you have Judah. You'd think that Judah would be probably a better one, right? Who's the line of Jesus come through? Judah, through Perez, and we know from the book of Ruth. But Judah marries the daughter of Shahah, a Canaanite. Judah has a wife and 3 children, Er, Onan, and Shelah. Er marries Tamar, but God kills him because he was wicked in his sight. Tamar becomes Onan's wife in accordance with the custom, but he too is killed after he refuses to father children for his older brother. Although Tamar should have married Selah, the remaining brother, Judah does not consent, and in response, Tamar deceives Judah into having intercourse with her by pretending to be a prostitute. Then Judah discovers that Tamar is pregnant, and he prepares to have her killed. And then he backs out of that. So he may have been deceived. I don't know how you get deceived, but regardless of how he got deceived, he must have been looking for a prostitute somehow. So his character is kind of out there a little bit. Dan, the 5th, was born to Bilhah. In the book of Judges, in the account of Milcah's idol, describing the tribe of Dan as having used idols and making an ephod and teraphim to try to worship it, to try to combine the 2 worships. And then just in classical Jewish writings, that his character has always been kind of like described as a black sheep. And in Jeremiah, the north part of Canaan was always associated with darkness and evil. I mean, Joseph's brothers were not your typical, hey, let's go fishing together kind of brothers. I mean, these were rough dudes, willing to do whatever it took to protect their self-centeredness most of the time. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, Dan's much cowards. And you go back to that story. They're supposed to go into this area, this land, and they don't want to go in there because they look at it as rough. And that's when they go up to a different area. They're supposed to be taking over an area in the middle, and then they go all the way up to the north because they don't like what's been proportioned by God to them.
Right.
So I mean, you start thinking about what each person's not fulfilling what God has asked them to do. You talked about Judah. Give this woman a child. Her husband has died. Make sure that we offer this up, and she has to go ahead and go about doing this. I don't know if it was a matter of money or what the deal was that he doesn't want to go ahead and do this. But there was a request that was part of the law for them to do this. They understood that they must be able to take that wife and be able to give her something because they couldn't take care of themselves in that society. It's simply how land and everything passed on. But every single one of them, the story
Yeah, they are, and we learned right from this family, previous generations. I'll get to you in a second, Stephanie. I mean, they are self-centered people right from the get-go. When you look about Jacob and Esau in that story, every person involved in that story was focused on themselves. Stephanie. Right. No, especially to your point, sir, that they knew, but they were choosing to buck God's ordinances and do what they wanted to do. But not all of them. There's not bad things recorded about all of them. I mean, you've got Gad. I couldn't recall of any place there was anything mentioned negative about Gad. Asher, the second son of Bilhah, his descendants come all the way into the New Testament. It says in Luke chapter 2, verse 36, that one of Asher's descendants, a prophetess named Anna, was blessed to meet the baby Jesus just days after his birth. Issachar, in fact, it says something positive about him, that sort of that they understood the times and without the knowledge of what Israel should do. Zebulon. So you got some of them that weren't specifically had negative things said about them, but then consider this verse. When his brothers saw him, that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. And his brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you rule over us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream. Whether Reuben was there or not, physically at that moment, he roundaboutly heard about it, but they were all involved in this plot to murder. So whether they didn't have anything negative said about them in chapter 47, like Stephanie's talking about, with the future's gonna hold for them. At this moment, they were all conducting murders and lies. Phil.
One thing that has been kind of rolling around my head sitting here listening to all this is how far these people will go to perpetuate the lie. In other words, he might not have been there, he may have been there, but he knew his brother was sold. They took his coat of many colors and they covered it up in him. They all went back and said all of them were there.
Yeah.
They sat there and told him and said, "No, your son is dead." So we have to be real careful about that, because there's an old saying: once you start lying, you have to keep lying to cover up the lies. And what would the father have done if he had found out that one of them had come forward and said, "No, we just sold your brother, your favorite, into slavery, and now he's in Egypt," or wherever he ended up? What would that have done to the rest of the sons? So
they all had to toe the line.
No choice. They had to continue with the lie, or they had to suffer the wrath of the father.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
Verse 22 though does say that Reuben had planned to take him back to his father.
He did. It does say that.
He changed his mind and then, but he had good intentions. It sounds like in this verse.
Mm-hmm. Good intentions till his brother said, "Oh, let's do this instead."
He didn't carry it out.
Yes, sir.
I just found it very striking that we see something very similar early on in Genesis as well. In Genesis 4, with the issue of Cain and Abel, it was brought up before on this aspect of favoritism and hatred, and how that's something that we have to look at take it a little bit deeper in it than the application that we can garner from that. And in both instances, somebody was favored. In both instances, somebody didn't like the fact that they were favored.
Yeah.
And in both instances, someone took it into their own hands, one to the extreme of somebody dying, and the other one almost dying. And I think it just shows us how dangerous that can be when we feel that way about others, and not just our own families, but how we act with our own people, so to speak, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads me right into our final few points here. So after after Joseph is gone, after they throw him into the pit, what do? I mean, think about that. that one verse shows what kind of men you're dealing with right here. You can probably hear Joseph down in the pit screaming at him, hollering at him, and they're just sitting down, hey man, pass the mustard. That shows the depth of their heart, and how cold and intense there was hate for them. Yeah, Mom.
Well, even though all of that happened, God had a plan. And later on, when Joseph reveals himself, he says, I think it's in chapter 45, that it wasn't you, it was God that brought me here to save lives.
Yeah, and that was Joseph's total response to it. That this was God's plan from the beginning. But it took years and years for him to develop that, because what happened? What kind of heart? If you were thrown into a pit, what would happen to your heart, to your brothers? You'd be full of hurt and possibly hatred and anger too. So he went to Egypt with those feelings towards his brother. So he had to work his way out of that resentment as well, to understand that God put him in this position to save his family. All right, real quick, we got a few minutes left. So you can see when they sit down to eat lunch that your heart, my heart, your heart can get hardened to a point where you can kill somebody and sit down and eat your lunch. That seems improbable, but it happens. You see it on the news every day. So what's the Bible say about hate? And 1 John 2:9 says, whoever says that he is in the light and hates his brother is still in darkness. Leviticus 19:17, you shall not hate your brother in your heart, but you shall reason frankly with your neighbor, lest you incur sin because of him. 1 Corinthians 5:21, if a man says, I love God and hates his brother, he is a liar. For he who doesn't love his brother, whom he has seen, how can he love God whom he has not seen? If you, me, anyone allows hate to develop in our hearts, and hate can develop from the smallest little infraction your brother or your friend or whoever does to you. I promise you it can. If you let it fester, it can develop into hate, and hate is sin, and sin leads to death. And we all know that. So how do we get to a point of being filled with so much hate? I've hated somebody before. It's gone away, but has everybody in here felt like they've hated somebody, something before? Or is it just me? Are you raising your hand that you hated somebody? No, I'm kidding. Go ahead.
I don't think we'll No, I think we need to be careful. There's in some people's mind there could be two aspects of hate. There's a hate where you just make a general statement. I hate this. I hate that. I hate what happened. I hate that you were able to do this. But that kind of hate may not lead to a drastic measure. In these specific occasions, and the one I mentioned before back in Genesis 4 as well, these aspects of hate were extreme hatred for their brothers that led to a point of the brothers doing that to Joseph, and then in the aspect of Cain and Abel and killing him.
Right.
And I think we need to be careful when it comes to how we define hate and how we feel hate.
I agree. And when I say that I've hated somebody or something, I've never hated anyone to the point where it blinded my eyes to the fact that there was sin involved on the other end of it if I let it keep developing.
It's not good for us to say we hate something.
Right.
We need to make sure that it's not that level of hate where we've got that hatred and we're going to kill because of that hate.
When you become so consumed that nothing else is relevant in your life other than achieving the fulfillment of that hatred. All right, we got about 2 minutes left. So what can be done about feelings of hatred and jealousy? In Psalms chapter 37:8 it says, refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. So when you become angry, can that lead to hate? Yeah. When Jesus got angry at the temple, could that have led to hate? He was sinless, but as a man, he could have hated what they here's your point. He hated what they were doing, but he didn't hate the people. He wasn't consumed with so much hate for what they were doing that he was willing to kill them. He just was putting an end to what they were doing.
And it's mentioned that God hates sin.
Yes. So the first thing you can do is figure out what the problem is why do you have these feelings of hate in your life? Has someone made you bitter? Somebody made you angry? You've got to get to the bottom of it and accept the problem. If you don't accept that you have these feelings in your heart, you're not going to be able to change it. They didn't. They were so consumed that nothing was going to satisfy their hate until he was gone. And then sometimes you just have to back down. We live in a society where when you're told to back down, what does that make you look like? A coward. But if me backing down preserves my soul from hate, then that's not being a coward. That's being brave to try to save your soul and save others by putting this out of your life. All right, that's really all. We kind of talked about the favoritisms and jealousy lessons. The final point, though, is to Mom's point, is that God's sovereignty in difficult times. These brothers had no clue the sovereignty of God was working through this. I don't believe Joseph even did at the moment. He's having these visions about the future, but I don't think he knew necessarily how that was going to play out. And but God did, and His sovereignty was through this from the beginning to the end. All right, thank you guys.